Alrighty, are we ready for the next non-dessert thing? Well, that's good. For me, it's Monday, and I have to admit that I didn't quite make it through the weekend without working, but there was a good excuse, which I think I explained in one of the previous videos that, time, wibbly-wobbly stuff, meh. But anyways, I hope you had a good weekend, and on to the story. A quick thank you to the T5 peeps. Bob the Dragon, Data Magnet, Cat Crab Lobster, Duck Machine, Try Again 95, Astray the Dreamer, Mezic, Budic Joel, German Chemist, Casper Arnholtz, and Chaos to Mist. Thank you very much. The Care and Feeding of Humans, Part 8. There is a large amount of evidence that, while humans grow old, they never grow up. Even in human societies, there are wide discrepancies about adulthood. Ages for drinking or inhaling intoxicants, fighting wars, driving manual drive vehicles, procreating, and even voting in elections are non-standard on the entire Earth world. Combine that with the common complaint amongst themselves that they don't know how to adult, as well as their propensity for dangerous entertainment, and many psychologists agree that humans never actually become adults. Audiobook, Review of Ontological Species Studies, The Care and Feeding of Humans, There's Snow on the Roof, published by Glass and Steel, The Care and Feeding of Humans, Translation Engine 3.14159. The tour went quite well, Nereth thought. Quereth got to show off the shuttle, which was his pride and joy. Tereth got time to quiz each person about their favorite and not-so-favorite foods. Even Zoe answered his questions politely. And if Tereth was a little disturbed by some of their menu choices, he didn't show it. Of course, Linmeads were far from vegetarians themselves. When it came to food sources in the aggregate, the simple rule was sapient races don't eat other sapient races. And that was generally good enough for everyone. Nereth watched Zoe carefully, and Zoe did seem to be enjoying herself. She seemed relaxed and would laugh at stories, or just watch Quereth being so excited about his shuttle. And then, something would happen, and Zoe would become stiff and distant. The first time it happened, Quereth had been giving the tour of the shuttle. Everything was fine, and then Zoe accidentally banged her arm on the doorway. It made a loud clang, but Quereth barely stopped talking, so Nereth wasn't sure what had made Zoe clamp down again. The second time it happened, Tereth had just asked Zoe what her favorite sauce was. Zoe had reached out with her left hand to scratch her right arm. As soon as she started, she stopped and froze. Tereth had to ask her a second time. When it happened a third time, just after Zoe had been stretching her arms over her head, Nereth finally got it. Zoe was fine until something reminded her of a prosthetic arm. Nereth thought back to her questions of Zoe yesterday and cringed inwardly. She'd seen Zoe's face go blank and just hadn't put it all together. At least some of Zoe's emotional damage was related to her arm. When Nereth had ordered Zoe from the catalog, there hadn't been a lot of details available. Sometimes entire records about the expedition were sealed, so Nereth hadn't really thought about what Zoe's past jobs had been. She'd just been excited to be able to hire a human with Zoe's skills at such a great price. Well, that and getting to be around humans. Sealed records, Nereth thought. Certainly she couldn't access those records, but Nereth knew a guy, and he might have access to those records. Once the tour was over, Zoe, Alan, and Nate headed to the records room to study the details of the flyby. Quereth and Tereth both had jobs to get to, but they lingered for a minute after the humans took off. "It's Nate, isn't it?" said Tereth. Quereth nodded in agreement. "Nate is the damaged one." Nereth looked at them both in surprise. "Why do you say that it's Nate?" Quereth shrugged. "He's always joking around, but doesn't actually laugh a lot. For a funny guy, he doesn't seem that happy. It seems like a cover," Tereth added. "And why would they need a cover unless they were damaged or trying to hide it?" Nereth looked down the corridor that the humans had taken to the records room. "I hadn't thought of that. See you in the common room for dinner. Don't be late." Tereth rolled his eyes, evidently a habit he picked up from her. "Nereth, you're not our mother, and we're perfectly capable adults. Well, I am. Quereth might not be." Whatever else he might have wanted to say got lost as Querif gave Terif a shove and then grabbed him around the neck. "Are you using your words, Querif?" Terif said in a slightly strangled voice. "A physical response shows a lack of wit." Nerif walked away, knowing this could go on for a good 10 minutes. She hurried down the corridor after the humans, the guide light taking her to the records room. Nera found Zoe, Nate, and Alan gathered around the hollow of the planet, created during the flyby. "No satellites like our moon," Nate said. "That means no big tides to speak of." Alan nodded in agreement. "And look at this, here, here, and here." He spun the planet around and pointed at the 3 large areas of water. "The records indicate salt water, but they're not oceans, really. They're just seas, so I'm guessing no hurricanes." "I agree," said Zoe. "Of course, that doesn't rule out tornadoes or other extreme wind conditions. No huge mountains," Zoe paused in thought. "Might indicate no tectonics, but could be harsh storms that scour everything flat." "No volcanoes," Nate said, giving the planet another spin. Nerif realized that they were assessing the planet versus their own planet dangers. It was odd hearing them discuss the very things that made their own world so dangerous in such casual terms. "We should check for evidence of storms, especially electrical storms," Zoe said. Nate shook his head. "The ground station hasn't reported any storms in the 9 months that it's been here." "What about the state of the trees near the landing spot?" Alan asked. "Don't they look a little weird to you?" He spread out his hand, zooming in on the image. Zoe turned her head sideways. "See what you mean. I don't see damage, but I do see new growth. No bones, not a lot of litter on the floor. But something is weird." She looked at Nate. "What do you think?" Nate looked and shrugged. "No records of storms in the past 9 months. New growth, but no marks of debris. Maybe it was spring?" Zoe nodded slowly. "It's possible, but I think we should prepare for storms, just in case. Alan, will you confirm that there are enough storm tents for us and the droids?" "No problem." Alan made some notes in his compad. "Does anyone know when we get close enough to get live update images?" Zoe asked. Nate and Alan looked at each other and shook their heads. Nerif coughed, and they looked at her in surprise. Evidently, no one had noticed her come into the room. "I believe that we will have updated images 1 week out. Querif was demanding updates for his flight plans," she said. "Good," Nate said. Zoe turned back to the planet, as though looking for an answer. "How long has Querif been a shuttle pilot?" Nerif coughed again. "I believe the question you really want to ask is, how many successful landings has he made as a shuttle pilot?" Zoe turned back to Nerif and smiled. A small smile, but a real one. "And how many unsuccessful ones?" "He's never had an unsuccessful landing," Nerif said proudly, "and he's flown over 200 missions, including one where a storm took out the autopilot and he had to hand navigate to the dock with the ship." Zoe's eyes widened in appreciation, and she nodded. "So, he's not inexperienced, just young." "Young is not a crime," Nerif said softly. "No," Zoe agreed, as she put her hands down on the table and looked at them. "Young is not a crime." End of chapter. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed